Welcome to Topics. My guest today is Nicci Kadilak. Welcome, Nicci.
Thank you for having me.
Nicci is the founder, publisher, editor, chief cook and bottle washer of Burlington Buzz, and that's going to be our topic today in a wide-ranging interview about the startup, its motivation, its mission statement, how you got here, where did you matriculate, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
All right, all of the things.
So let's start with, did the decline in print media locally, nationally, et cetera, motivate you to see an opening here that this might be a business for you?
So that's a good question. Yes and no, I would say. My motivation really at the beginning was a little bit selfish, as I noticed that there was an election coming up, and I thought, I don't really know what's going on in this election. I don't know what the offices are. I don't necessarily know what the select board does or what the school committee's responsibilities are, and I didn't know who was running. I didn't really know a whole lot about anything, and so I started this as a way to sort of educate myself about all of the different aspects of our community's government and infrastructure, and then I wanted to share that. I'm an educator by trade and by heart, so when I'm learning something new, I'm really excited to share it with other people, and that's sort of how we got started.
So where did you matriculate? I mean, obviously you're a writer, but
Yes.
Did you go in education to begin?
Yeah, so this is a sort of circuitous journey. I was a neuroscience major, so that's what my degree is in. And everybody
That's hilarious.
laughs. I know. So I was going to be a brain surgeon. Clearly, that worked out really well.
That is hilarious.
So yes, my degree is from BU with a degree in neuroscience with a minor in math. So that viewers can't tell, but I have on my special lucky math leggings on because that's sort of my first love was always math. And
E equal MC squared is on there, right?
That is exactly right. We're just talking about Einstein. So when I learned that there was a need for teachers of science and math to go into communities that needed them, I decided to join Teach for America, and so I became a teacher. And I've been a teacher, and I didn't, funny enough, happen to teach math or science. I taught bilingual kindergarten instead, because what better place for a person with a neuroscience
major to start? Sure, that makes perfect sense.
It wasn't medical school, but it was close.
Jeez.
I know. So since then I've been in education really since 2004. I did that until 2018 when I started writing. I left my job as an assistant principal in Dorchester and kind of stayed home and started writing. Wrote a book. Did
let's plug that right away.
We can talk about the book, yeah.
Yeah, well, we'll show it, but we'll talk about it later.
All right, yep. So after I did that, actually, when I was in the middle of writing that book, the pandemic happened, I had a baby, and everything was sort of in a state of flux. And so that probably is what gave me the internal motivation to start something new, and sort of now it's grown into this news business that I'm really proud of.
So did you have a business plan? It just started as kind of a lark, self-educating yourself in the ways of Burlington.
Yeah.
When did you come here? When did you come to Burlington?
I've been here, so I met my husband in 2002 when I was still at BU. And he grew up here in Burlington, and so I've been here off and on since then. I moved to California for 5 years and came back in 2009, lived in Woburn for a while, and we've been in Burlington in our house since 2013. So it's,
related to Kadilak, Paul Kadilak and Kadilak Realty, and brother-in-law. Right?
Yeah, he's my brother-in-law.
Done some very nice work in town, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how no business plan, you just go off and
so it's
decide that you're
embarrassing.
going to turn into something that's revenue generating.
Right. So it's embarrassing to say that there was, I feel very impostery when I say I had no business plan to start with. What I really wanted to do was just educate people. And then, I realized that I was pretty good at sort of explanatory reporting, explaining difficult issues and breaking them down for people. And so I started a Substack newsletter, and Substack is just a newsletter platform, but it also allows you to collect subscriptions for your newsletter. And since I started with subscriptions on, and immediately people were interested in subscribing in a paid way to that newsletter. So started as a newsletter, and then after 2 years of using just Substack as the website and the newsletter, we transitioned to a different platform where we have a separate newsletter, a separate website, and a separate advertising component too. Now we have a business plan.
Now you have a business plan. Okay.
Now this is a legitimate thing that I do and spend 40 hours a week on, and
So you're coming up on your third birthday.
Yes, sir.
Are you break even at this point? Are you in a profit mode?
That's a good question. At this point, a lot of our revenue comes from grants, and so without those grants, I think we'd probably be right around break even. With the grants, we have a little bit more runway, a little bit more cushion to be able to, get a tech stack, for example.
Okay. What is your subscriber level at this point, and what elements are you using to reach out and to expand that base?
Great question. We have about 2,000 people who read the newsletter on a daily basis.
But that's the free newsletter.
That's the free newsletter.
Okay.
There are a little over 200 people who subscribe to pay for the newsletter.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, there's not much of a differentiating factor. Sometimes we have specific events for paying members, but we're right now in the middle of revamping our entire membership program. Because I want to really make sure to delineate all of the things that we're doing for the community and highlight those, and tell readers this is what you're getting when you subscribe as a paid member.
People can't expect to get this kind of content free on a continual basis.
Yeah, it's just the economics don't work out. I just this month paid myself for the first time just enough to cover childcare for the month.
Nicci, that doesn't work.
It does not work. It does not work. And luckily I'm fortunate to have the flexibility to do that. But I also I'm very cognizant of the fact that you burn out in doing things like this for free. And there are so many members of the community who say how much they appreciate the work that we're doing and want an opportunity to contribute. So,
yeah, but you can't spend appreciation.
Right.
If we go back, just as kind of a lead in here, in the middle 80s, we hosted a program here called Editors Roundtable, which featured 3 of the daily editors. Oh, well, 2 of them were weekly, 1 was daily. Each of them had between 10 and 15 years experience in covering the town. That level of coverage has disappeared, as it has nationally, as the print media has faded away, become less and less important.
Yeah.
People going to free websites, etc.
Right.
That's not going to work, and it's not going to work for the citizenry as well if we're not getting that type of in-depth coverage that you can get here at BCAT, that you can get at the Buzz.
Yeah.
So how are you reaching out? What methods are you using? I know I see you at Burlington Day. I think I saw you at Diwali. And what was the other one we had recently that was big? Ganesh. I didn't see it Ganesh, but how are you reaching out in order to obtain more and more subscribers?
Yeah, so we started on Facebook, and we maintain this really, really big presence on Facebook. So we have a Facebook page. I share stories from the day. I also share them in Facebook groups as well. And then we create Facebook advertising. We boost some of our posts. And that really is just a way of sort of bringing more people into the fold and letting them know, here we are, here's what we do, hope you enjoy it, and getting people signed up to the newsletter. The other thing that we do, we have a print magazine that comes out once every quarter. Yeah, so our seasonal print magazine, which is the fall magazine.
So you've expanded into print as well?
A little bit, yeah. We only print a very small number of copies of these because they're really, really expensive to print.
Yeah.
So we hope to break even maybe with people purchasing individual fall magazines, or now we're working on the winter one.
Well, ads are important too. Are you reaching out to the business community for ads?
Yes, so we do have some really strong advertising partnerships as well. You can see in the newsletter that you get every morning, there will be a brand partnership that business that we partner with that's a local business that we advertise for the week, and then you can see on the website as well. We'll have some advertising. We try not to go overboard. There are some news sites that are just ad, all over. Right. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to give people a pleasurable experience, so we have to balance the economics with the reader experience.
Now, it's a heavy load to carry singularly. I noticed recently you've added on some staff. How has that worked out?
Pretty well. We have an editorial assistant who works for us a few hours a week, and then we just hired a social media person also who works with us for a couple hours a week as well. It's helpful. It helps to sort of do some of the tasks that it essentially like get some of the tasks done so I can focus on the reporting work. Until I'm able to make enough money to hire a reporter that can share that load with me. It's generally me, watching the meetings and writing them up and, going to events and things like that. But I do go to in-person events, and we just actually had a really fun contest, the Decorate Burlington
I saw that
contest.
Decorate Burlington,
It
yes.
was super fun. We had 13 entries this time. I think that for the winter contest we'll probably have a lot more than that. But we did have over 400 unique votes as well. And so I think that's another way of sort of getting community engagement and also letting people know who we are and what we do.
Now you've done a little bit of podcasting. But you haven't done a regular program on BCAT. Can we look forward to that?
It would be great if I could find the time to do that, or a cloning machine. Do you have one stashed in a closet somewhere? I do like doing interviews with people, and the spoken medium, sort of the interview medium, is just different when you have audio. But I don't know anytime soon that I'm going to have time to do something like that.
Overall, what's been the reception that you've received in the community?
I think for anybody who I've ever talked to is usually reaching out because they appreciate what we do in the community, because they want to know how they can support us. People really enjoy the events calendar that we have on the website and in the newsletter. People really enjoy
Well, it's really one-stop shopping for what's going on a daily basis in the community.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think people also, maybe didn't realize that they wanted to know what the select board did last night. But since they're here anyway, why not read about it? And I think that's a lot of people have gotten involved that way. They've learned more about their local government. They've learned, about upcoming elections. They've learned who's running and how sort of the inner workings of the town in a way that they weren't learning before. And I think the hole that we filled sort of is one that was left by the newspaper that is not with us anymore, the Burlington Union, that some people really enjoyed. I also think, however, that people need to be people have been conditioned over the last several decades that local news isn't important, local governments isn't important, local politics isn't important. Really, what's important is what goes on up there at the national level. And I don't believe
that's
that.
reflected, and we get 23, 25, 2,800 voters come out on issues that directly affect them. We're spending $170 million, and we got 2,300 people reflecting
out of 26,000.
Right, right. And then we'll go to November 5th, and we'll have 8,000 people turn out who have had absolutely no impact whatsoever on the national scene, because we already know what Massachusetts is going to vote, so they might as well not even show up. So what is your impression of town government in general and the awareness of the average voter in how town government works?
So I think if people are coming out to town elections in April, it's because they already are somewhat aware and somewhat involved. And that's why we get a 15% turnout every year, is because like I just mentioned, we've been conditioned over decades to believe that none of that is important to us, that we don't have the time or capacity or interest in learning about those things. I do think that once people realize what really is at stake, what maybe you have to pay for your trash pickup next year because of something that had to be cut. This isn't happening in Burlington, but if that happened, you would want to know about it, right? You would care. If you all of a sudden had to start paying for your kids to ride the bus to school, maybe you're willing to do it, but you probably want to be made aware of it before it just happened. And that's how these decisions that are made at a local level are really going to impact your tax bill, your bottom line, and your home values, for example, your mortgage payment, all of those things that are so intimately important to the average Joe on the street, or Jane, or whatever. that's all decided at the local government level. And once people start understanding that, then they start to be more interested and more engaged. And I think we've seen that in the last election.
Well, you've been covering, well, did we see it? We did see a couple of big races in school committee.
Yep.
We saw it in selectmen. Do you think it's time for change in town government? Do you think it's time for change in town meeting, for instance, which we get about, 75% on average attendance?
Just
They run
around,
for it,
yeah.
and then they don't show up.
Yeah.
And we've had a couple of uncontested races in the major offices. Is it time for a more condensed type of management for the town?
I am not qualified to answer that question. I can tell you all of the things that I've...
Opinions don't require qualifications. You can ask me. I know for a fact, because I've made many of them and have many opinions without qualifications.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's time for an increase in the awareness for sure, right? Because I think one of the reasons that we don't have people contesting races is because we don't have people knowing what the races are, knowing that they can have an impact in such a short and a short time period, but a significant way that they can impact what happens in town. So I think that the first step really is greater awareness. I don't think that people are going to necessarily get more engaged because we have a consolidated government. And I do think that there are concerns about consolidation of power and about influence in a smaller town council style government or mayoral kind of government. But I don't think it can hurt to take a look and see what other towns are doing as well. I think town meeting is just such a really interesting concept because it's such an old form of government and
Purest form of democracy, supposedly, New England town meeting.
Yeah, right. And it's like it's one step away from a pure democracy, right, where every single person gets voted, gets counted in their vote. And the representative town meeting, is also just an interesting thing because only a few towns in the state do it relative to the.
But we've had some blunders. They've made some real blunders over the. But we can talk about that at another time. They've made some great decisions, but they've made some blunders as well.
Yeah, and I think that, the government's going to be imperfect. I do think modernizing the way town meeting works is going to be, it's going to be essential moving forward. I think that the way the world works has changed. And the way town meeting works, if we're going to stick with a town meeting form of government, it also has to evolve. I think we, meaning we as a society, have made engaging in town government more difficult than it needs to be. And we exclude people who work multiple jobs so that they can afford their rent. We exclude people who have people at home to take care of. We exclude, I don't know. There's a whole.
But in contrast to that, the strength of town meeting over the years, 200 years, was that it was a place for a gathering. Where coalitions were built, where friends were made, where ideas were exchanged. That can't be done via Zoom and various, extraneous ways to engage. So I'm halfway between where you're at and where I'm at.
Yeah, and I think what was decided this last town meeting was that only 15 people could be remote, but we will allow hybrid access. So that's not going to be put into place until after.
Well, the legislature has to approve that,
a different thing has to happen that we won't get into the weeds here. But I think that could be a sort of middle ground, perhaps. I do think, based on my experience on town meeting, coalitions seemed to be formed outside of town meeting. And I'm sitting with 5 or 6 people that I know already outside of town meeting, but I wasn't really talking to. Maybe that's me. Maybe it's me being antisocial, but I wasn't really talking to the other members of town meeting unless I already knew them from somewhere else.
But the other aspect of that was it's the one place where annually, three times a year, where the people who are direct decision makers have to come before the membership and present themselves.
Yes.
Even if they're only sitting there, if you have an issue, for instance, with the DPW director, you can walk up to him and say, hey, police chief, fire chief, they all have to be there, which again, with this remote type of thing, separates us.
It limits the access a little bit.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah, I think I actually didn't know that until you just said it, but that's really interesting. It makes me think of the Civic Expo that we do, which not to segue into it or anything, but I will. The Civic
We're going.
Expo,
The library's going.
Good. The Civic Expo that we did last January was super successful, and that's what essentially what we were doing is getting all of the decision makers, all of the department heads, all of the elected and appointed officials into the same room so that people can, not in a way that like, oh, I'm mad at you. Somebody said to me, oh, that sounds like a forum for people to just like come yell at us. No. This is like a non-threatening environment.
That's
where you can get to meet
very
people.
rarely, if ever, has happened. I was the moderator for 11 years. I never saw a confrontation of a town official by anybody in those meetings. And thank God you've moved to a larger venue
thank goodness.
for the Civic. Tell us about the Civic Forum. When is that coming up?
That's coming up in January 15th. It will be at the high school in the gym, I believe. It will be from 5 to 7, same time as last year on a Wednesday afternoon. And the reason we choose that time is because the departments are already working at that time.
Right.
And so we want to make it not something extra for people to have to do, but something they enjoy as part of their workday. And then, everybody's invited, and we'll also be having a fundraiser right after that. So I will pick my stuff up and move myself to Goodnight Johnny's right down the street. We'll have a private room. We'll do.
Well, that's in January, but you have one coming up on November 16th. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so we already talked about the fall magazine. We're hard at work on the winter one right now. It should go to print sometime late this week or early next week. And in order for us to celebrate with the community all of this work that we've done, we are going to have a launch party called the Buzz Bash.
Buzz Bash?
Again, at Goodnight Johnny's on November 16th from
5 to 7.
5 to 7, yep. There's going to be some music. There's going to be some food. You get a free advance copy with your ticket. I wouldn't say free because the ticket's not free, but you get an advance copy of the Winter magazine before anybody else gets to see it, which is always kind of nice.
Okay, so let's plug that. Where can we find that?
That'll be that's on Facebook. You can find it in Facebook. And
Burlington Buzz Facebook.
Burlington Buzz Facebook group, yes. And I'm trying to remember if I put anything about it on the website. If I didn't yet, I will.
Okay. All right. All right, we only have a few minutes left, so let's talk about going forward now. In the traditional print media, there's letters to the editor and editorials. Can we look to see you expanding into those arenas?
Yes, there is a place right now on the website that says letters to the editor that doesn't have anything in it.
There's no letters in it.
No letters in it. Okay. I did want to wait, and I didn't want to launch something like that in the middle of a contentious situation. So somebody tried to send me a letter to the editor like right before a big vote was going to happen. I was like, listen, I don't.
Plus a presidential, you get all kinds of weirdos like me writing stuff.
We need to stay away from that. But we will definitely open that up to the public, probably maybe around our 3rd anniversary. I think would be a good time to do that. We're going to be revamping our website and our newsletter and everything sort of all at once. So that might be a good time to debut.
Okay, editorials and endorsements. There's quite a controversy going on right now because of Bezos and the New York Times and actually USA Today about endorsements and editorials being, labeling the individual institution as one side or the other, as opposed to trying to provide news without a leftist or rightist spin on it.
Right.
So how do you feel about that? How do you feel about editorials?
So my personal opinion, editorials, that I might have to table that question for a second. But as far as endorsements specifically, I don't like the idea of doing that with my news publication. It was billed to be a neutral, nonpartisan place to get information. We don't talk about national politics or government. I don't even use the word politics when we're talking about what we provide. We provide news about government events, current events and local government. So if somebody uses the word politics, I actually say that's not what we do here. So I try to be as neutral and fact-giving as possible, and I think that endorsing a project or a candidate is not the right move for us as a publication. I could see, a publication that already is seen as having a left bent or a right bent having less friction when they make a decision like that. But
they also carve out a certain portion of the population who will never buy their product. So that's not good for a business plan.
Well, right, and
business plan.
I wouldn't. I always struggle with the question of who's your audience, because in my mind, my audience is Burlington, right? You know, I'm not looking to Trump voters or Harris voters or Stein voters or anything like that. I'm not looking for parents or grandparents or people without children or any other kind of demographic. I really want every single person in Burlington to feel welcome and home and like they can get the information that they need without me sort of putting my own opinions on it. It's actually made me harder to form my own opinions because I've been able to
try to
see
be so
both
balanced, right? It's so difficult.
Yeah, I mean, really, you know, I can see why people would or would not want a consolidated Fox Hill, or why they would or would not want to put a debt exclusion on the ballot. Like, I don't have any of the answers. All I can do is give you the information.
Right.
And that's sort of the way
I thought
feel
your
about
Fox Hill
endorsements.
reporting was really in depth.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Okay, well, we've only got a few minutes left, so we're going to give you an opportunity to plug this book because you are a published author.
I am indeed. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Okay. How did you arrive at this?
This is a really interesting concept because really, so I found myself thinking about pregnancy.
You have
Funny
three.
enough, I have 3 children.
Yeah.
And I was just wishing at one point that there was some kind of way to monitor what was going on in my body, because if you've ever been pregnant before, you know how anxiety producing this event is.
I wouldn't know.
You wouldn't know maybe, but
No.
there are I think a lot of people share this in that you just have to sort of trust your body to know what it's doing and do the right thing, and there's nothing you can do about it. So I found myself wishing for that, and then my what if brain kind of took over, and I thought, you know, well, what if there was a way to monitor what was happening inside your body? Well, maybe that would be some kind of invasive monitoring, or maybe it would be instead a artificial womb. And maybe the government would mandate that because it makes it so much easier to predict how pregnancy is going to go. So now women aren't allowed to have babies anymore. And that's what this book is about. It's about a group of women who decide that they're going to take back the right to give birth naturally to their children. And
So this is a science fiction bent?
I would say so, yes. Yeah. So this is, I would say, a near future, we could call it a lot of things, feminist reproductive dystopia. It's like we compare it to The Handmaid's Tale sometimes, but it's
But a return to conventional womanhood.
yeah, exactly. Yes. Depends
If
what you
there's
mean
such
by
a thing.
conventional womanhood.
If there's such a thing, I don't want to be stepping on those toes. You dropped it?
Yeah, I dropped my mic.
Okay. Well, don't be looking for it. Okay. Well, as it turns out, we've run out of time. I want to thank our guest, Nicci Kadilak of Burlington Buzz. You can find it on Facebook, and you can go to Burlington Buzz. You can
Burlington.buzz.
Burlington.buzz. Okay. Thank you, Nicci, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Have a pleasant day.